Da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. Joel Felsenstein, you are the man. Different, not less. I appreciate you so much. Rockstar X, one of our sponsors for this evening. I'm so proud of Joel and the work that he and his team are doing across the pond in the UK. Fantastic work that Rockstar X is doing for the neurodiverse and autistic communities. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for that wonderful intro, outro video. We get so many compliments on that, my brother. I can't wait to have you in the show too. His band, the Renegade Playboys, will be doing their musical magic on our Feed for Good show. One of the people that you can come see. Only $20 for a ticket. You get your tickets now, folks. Next up, Circle of Friends Club. Man, I love Jason Wilson. If you haven't met Jason Wilson, if you don't know what he is doing with Circle of Friends Club, you need to check that out. Fantastic people doing unbelievable stuff. He has an event that is monthly called the Freedom Fight Expo, which he tackles major events. This last one was about mindfulness and oncology. And so we highlight them each month before their show. So they've got a show coming up with us. I believe it's the 15th or 16th, whatever that Tuesday is, either the 15th or 16th. And we will be talking about his show that's coming up that weekend after that. So welcome to everybody that is just joined the Circle of Friends Club. I got to connect with you on there. I haven't been on the platform in a while. My apologies. I was on an audio earlier with Tennille and a bunch of other people that are from the club, and it was absolutely awesome. The Hounds of Business. Talk about another group that is just moving and shaking. People that are supporting other people. That is the way to be. You know, I am all about collaboration. That's why you're about to meet some fantastic partners that I get so tickled to have them do this discussion with us on a quarterly basis. But we have 100 partners in 6 countries. And I think about where we started back in June with 8 partners, the OG 8, I call them. And I'm so thrilled at how we've grown and how the Hounds of Business has grown in the time that I've known Mike Ashebrainer and that whole crew there. So thrilled to be part of that community and to have you supporting us. Last but certainly not least, the gifted bipolar writer, Nick the GBW. You will know her on LinkedIn. She is incredible. She has her own business where she does publishing for anthologies. I'm in book 2 of the trilogy that she is releasing. What a group of amazing, incredible people. I'm reading their stuff and I'm going, oh no, don't publish mine. Theirs is so good. But I'm out there and talking about LinkedIn and how awesome it has been in different levels to talk about, meet people and talk about what we do on that platform. So thank you, Nick. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, the gifted bipolar writer. And without any further ado, let me bring up the titans in the industry. Oh my goodness. We're going to start right here. Look at this. Desiree Goldie in the house. She is the director of marketing, embedded recruiting, and interim solutions. I had to write all that down.
It's a lot.
That's a lot for ZRG. Thank you and welcome. Great to have you. Next up, Kylie van Luyn, the founder of Elevated Coaching and Consulting Global. She's in Australia. It is 9 a.m. on Friday. She is literally from the future. Thank you for being here today. Dr. Anne-Marie Ristow. I really dig moving this around like this. I'm having way too much fun. Dr. Anne-Marie Ristow in the house. See things differently. Systematic equity edits. Absolutely love what she's doing. I was tiny little part of taking a test, and we might talk about that. I know I've mentioned that in the past, but I love what you're doing. Love how you're breaking down barriers and biases. All of these ladies are doing incredible work. Last but certainly not least, my buddy in the house. They're all my buddies, every single one of them. I'm going to hug every single one, but I've gotten to hug this one in person. Oh my goodness, Tiffany Castagno is stepper in the house, and it is so great to have you here. And and since you're on the screen, we will start with you, and I will ask the questions, and we'll go. She just moved, and she's like, her and Mike just moved, and it's like, oh my goodness, so much going on in your life, so much happening. But tonight we're talking about belonging. And I know I've said this before. I may have mentioned it to other people in text and in posts, but I had this amazing conversation with Erin Johnson, and she was on our podcast, and she was talking about her thoughts on belonging and why she feels the way she does. So it brought up the question, is belonging something that you can teach, or that you can create from the culture that you have, or is it inherent from the culture that you create and it's a byproduct of that culture that you create? So we're going to start out with Tiffany. And Tiffany, I would just love, first of all, for you to kind of say what you think belonging means to you, and then answer that question.
Yeah, thank you for that invitation and the acknowledgement of this move as we settle. And I think it's top of mind for me as I reintegrate into community, being from Wisconsin, but not from the Madison area. And so where we belong and where we feel like we belong, what people bring into the fold and the environment that's created or that we move to or move through, to be able to feel like we are accepted, and not just from a place of like, okay, they're here. When I think about a neighborhood or a work culture, I don't want to just be accepted because I'm there, or tolerated. I want to feel like I truly am brought into the fold and like I'm wanted there, like I have something to contribute, and that I'm not an afterthought when meetings happen, when events happen, and that has happened to me in my work life. So I don't want that for other people. I think, you know, people often ask the difference between inclusion and belonging, and you can be invited to a meeting, but if your voice is not activated in that meeting, if you're constantly interrupted, you don't have a sense of belonging. And so I do feel like it can be very inherent. Some people have the gift of engendering that and bringing out psychological safety and creating safe space naturally. But I do think there's a degree to which it can be taught, assuming that person's teachable, coachable, willing, and that we can create spaces that maybe once they weren't that way, or we were a different place on our learning journey. And now we understand, oh, wait, people have basic needs to feel like they're a part of community, to feel like they're a part of a team, and to have some input into the goals that we're setting. So I do believe it can be both and, but we really are responsible, especially as leadership and individuals, to own and control like what we can in our spaces to create a sense of belonging. And we can do that by simple things like those of you who are listening to us tonight, by listening and really caring and asking questions.
Love that. And I'm not going to get tired of this whole moving the thing. I wish it would do it automatically, like when someone was talking. I have to figure that part out. So someone who knows StreamYard, you can help me in the audience and just sit there. Or I can just watch a YouTube and figure it out. But next, I'm going to just go straight down my list here. And same question, Desiree. What's belonging to you, and what do you think about that question? Can it be taught, learned, part of what you build in a community and a culture, or is it a byproduct?
Right. I'm going to agree with Tiffany mainly, right? And say that all of the things she said plus, right? So all of the things she said plus, but I do think that people think they build these like people first cultures, which is great. I want you all to do that. I want you to build these people first cultures that people naturally then feel like they belong. And I just believe that's not true, right? I believe there's so many other pieces to that puzzle that have to come to make people belong. And part of that is, and I do believe that you can train managers to be inclusive leaders and to look out for inclusivity. But I think the belonging part is the tricky part for me. I have a love-hate relationship with the word belonging in DEI. I have this, I want it to be there and I want it to be present, but I want inclusivity to be the first thing we're thinking about all the time, because I think the belonging then comes along as we start to build these inclusive cultures that then we're training our people to think that way. We're doing those things. And then I think some of this becomes part of their nature of how they start to look and treat people and create those psychologically safe areas. They start to listen more. They start to do all of those things. Those to me are how you get to belonging, right? It's just not a natural byproduct of the building a great culture, if we can say that. That's my 2 cents.
Oh, that's a great 2 cents. I would say that's more like 50 cents. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I tickle myself. That was fantastic. But now, Kylie, same question. And what's belonging to you, and can it be created?
Well, like Tiffany, we've just we've left the States temporarily. We're back home in Australia. But when I say back home, the States is home too. And so I do lots of reflection about, why do I feel like I belong to 2 different countries and 2 different lots of community? And for me, the concept of belonging, when I think about it, it represents community, and it's a real deep sense of connection. So for me, it's you've got inclusion, and you have to have inclusion first, but belonging is that deepest sense of that. And like the other ladies have said, you have to establish that inclusion and so many other things like psychological safety and well-being if you want to create that genuine feeling of belonging. But for me, it's feeling comfortable to be myself. It's feeling appreciated for who I am and what I represent in the workplace. I also think when we talk about inclusion and the link or the connection between inclusion, fostering a sense of belonging, it's really important, I think, to note that inclusion needs to be genuine and not just a tick box exercise to result in a sense of belonging. It's that deeper sense of inclusion for me. And I guess the 2 really important components to creating over time that sense of belonging is representation for different people in the workplace. A lot of staff that we work with say, I can't see myself in the leadership team. So there's no representation, or there's little. And I think if people don't feel that they're represented in their workplace or the workplace culture, they never really get to that sense of genuine, true belonging. And there's actually, when I think about workplace culture, there's a quote or a little saying that I like to sort of share with people. And it goes, a workplace culture that feels safe, fun, and productive for some team members may feel profoundly unsafe for others. So when we're talking about psychological safety and belonging, we need to recognise that this is the case. It's essential. It's an essential first step for any leader committed to building belonging, inclusion, and psychologically safe cultures for all. Everybody's experiences in the workplace are different. And so adopting that intersectional approach and lens will be really important if you want everyone to feel like that sense of belonging.
Oh, bravo. Bravo. Love all of that. Anne-Marie Ristow, come on up and tell us what you think. Bring on the belonging.
Okay, so some things that I jotted down while y'all were speaking, because I'm right there with Desiree. I'm like, yep, oh yeah, preach it, keep it coming. And so the key things that you mentioned were like, that really stood out for me were Tiffany started with, like, it's not about being tolerated, right? We're not like gonna beg for a seat at the table or for a voice to be heard. It is like about owning our place in our work situations and our work culture and being valued for that. And then also when Desiree talked about inclusivity, and that connected to when Kylie brought up the deep sense of connection and community, you know that I'm not going to be myself if I don't bring a little research into the conversation. So I was actually, and these things just happen. It was in my phone this morning and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for tonight. Novak Education was writing about a sense of belonging, and they were talking about the US Census in 2010, 9 million people identified as bicultural. And in 2020, that more than tripled to 33.8 million people. And so they use this phrase, and I don't speak Spanish, so I will not try to say it in Spanish, but in English, it translates to neither from here nor from there. And I think in the workplace, we need to really look at that sense of belonging through inclusion. I absolutely agree, Desiree. If we do a good job with inclusion and have that be the bones and the foundation of our workplace, then sense of belonging is much more naturally coming along. So it's about building that sense of belonging for here and there, not making people choose, really letting us bring what we have to the table and looking at how does it all come together. So John Cotter's book on Our Iceberg is Melting, brings in all of these different approaches to solving a bigger problem in the workplace and how we need everyone's approaches in order to really not just keep the status quo, but to be able to excel into innovation that society is asking for. So I think there's some really key components of remembering the representation of bicultural that we will never get where we want to be in the workplace if we're trying to use diversity as a checklist. We will never get to where we want to be. We need to make sure that we're looking at it as, no, it's here and there. And how are we really maximizing all that's brought to the table? And I do believe that that can be done. I don't believe that it happens naturally. I think that there's work that has to be done in order for that to happen.
I love that. I love all of that and everything that you guys have said. And I was playing around with the buttons, so I didn't take notes as well as you did. So, but what I wanted, I'm going to see if I can. All right. Well, that's now everybody's on the screen. We're all tiny, but we're on the screen. But this is, here's the interesting thing now. With the disintegration that we keep seeing over and over again with companies removing DEI programs, with companies, well, even with SHRM, taking out equity, with people and organizations deciding that what we do on a daily basis and the fight that we have in order to keep what we're talking about in the forefront, it's not as important as it was. What does that mean for belonging now? If that's going on and there's a disintegration happening, are you as concerned as I am that now more than ever we're going to have a problem with people feeling like they belong, and we're going to have a problem with inclusion, and we're going to have a problem with a further gap in equity and equality? Anybody jump in?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a concern I have every day. As you know, I write about it all the time. It's a struggle for me not to talk about how I want this to still be in your face. And the fact that you're backing away from it pisses me off. And that I think you're just reverting pre-2020, right? And who wants to go back there? No one. And so I work with organizations all the time that I talk to them about this work needs to be done consistently. And I love what Ann said, that, it takes time to get there and the work has to be done over a length of time. Jumping in and jumping out and that does not work. And then what happens is you build these cultures that are not inclusive and people don't feel like they belong. And you're constantly in this cyclical moment Now, do I think this changes depending on the political outcome? Maybe some of this comes back, right? But I'm hoping for the best, but we are getting farther and farther away from that true idea of what this should be looking like for most organizations. There's still organizations out there doing great work, so I don't want to take that away from them. But we're getting farther and farther away.
I'm just but before anybody else jumps in, I'm just curious, Desiree, do you think that's because we have short memories? So now it's 4 years. We're technically 3 years away from the pandemic.
Right.
So as each year has happened, the world was on fire in 2020, really started in 2019, but the world's on fire. Things are happening. It is a mess all over the place, and everything shuts down. And everybody decides that all the work that we've been doing for decades, now it matters. And we're going to do whatever we have. And so you've got the camps of, I'm going to check boxes, and you've got the camps of, I'm actually going to do the work, which I love. Every time I see you put the hashtag do the work, I'm just like, oh, do better and do the work. Do the work is Tiffany's, and yours is do better, folks.
Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, the question really is, do you think it's because we have short memories and people are just like, oh, well, the pandemic's long over?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do think DEI becomes this very reactionary thing to things that happen in organizations or things that happen in the world. And I think that's because, even though lots of us were doing this work for so long, when it all blew up with George Floyd and all of that, it became so big and there were no standards to doing the work. And we were just checking boxes and doing all these things. I just was on another speaking engagement where a lovely friend of mine talked about this in a really big way, that we're like right sizing DEI again, but now it's in a political climate that doesn't love it. And, it's become really, really crazy. So yes, I do think some of this work for organizations, not for us in this room, but for organizations, tends to be very reactionary to something happening. And it is because we have short memory. We don't remember how awful things were, or we don't remember how bad the organization was, or how many people we lost because they hated the culture. We forget all those things, and then we make this like cyclical thing that happens. And so the work never really gets done the right way. And I think we just need to stop, put it on pause, figure out how we do this work right, and then just do the work, right? And let it live. So yeah, absolutely.
I am so glad you said that, Desiree, because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, okay, I'm not going to be very popular by saying, because millions of dollars went into these like DEI initiatives, right? And we're looking at those pathways of policy and practice and procedures and professional learning. And some did well, some didn't, but it was whether they were being reactive or whether they were taking the opportunity that was being gifted to them. And those that were reactive were doing the check boxes. And I've heard and read so much on social media about like what a farce that was. It just was nothing. Like, so glad that initiative is out the door, but we have an opportunity now. I think it's like an even greater place to be, because we know what does not work, and we can be proactive and start to shine some light on that work that's been done, that was authentic, that was in the bones of the workplace, and really gave people the opportunity to be included. We have generations of workers coming in now that aren't going to tolerate workplaces that are not inclusive, that do not offer that sense of belonging. And so we can really like come alongside that and listen to people's voices and support, offering something even greater than what was a tagged office or a person in a corner, in a role of DEI. DEI is much bigger than one person or than a division. It is like through the veins, or needs to be through the veins of the workforce. So thank you for bringing up the.
I'm always unpopular, so I'm glad to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
To be the
I mean, I
unpopular.
work in HR. Hello. Miss Unpopularity here.
That's awesome.
5 generations in the workforce, and all of we have this whole group of my boomer brothers and sisters deciding they don't want to work anymore and camping out. I'm just like, I'm gonna stop working when my brain doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I love what I do. I love this, and we'll keep doing it until I can't function anymore. But literally, I mean, that's just me. But I get it, and you're right. The younger generations are just there are a lot of younger generations that are like, oh no, you're not doing that to me. I'm not doing that. Every time I see it, I kind of get tickled, and I think about what we did. I think about that job that I worked a zillion hours at $3.10 an hour, and I'm sitting there going, man, I killed myself. And I come in early and I do stuff off the clock, and all the crazy stuff. And these generations are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
It's
Bravo.
interesting though, because people try to tag that as they're being lazy. And I don't think they're being lazy at all. I think they're being decisive. And I think it's a form of advocating and being an activist for saying you can't just say on your website or sneak into the interview that you are generous in time for social impact areas. They expect it to be in the culture of the workplace. And when it's not, they leave, which was unheard of when I started working. It was that expectation that you started a job and you were there until you either died or retired, whichever came first, right? And they're like, yeah, no, you're not what I thought you were or what you presented yourself to be. And there's some real work for our organizations to do to be able to meet the decisiveness. Like a lot of people package it as the generations being the newer generations being indecisive or being lazy, and that's not the case at all. They know exactly what they want and they're not getting it, and they're going out and designing it and forming it themselves.
Agreed. I think it's more that they are in tune. They're very self-aware. So I think that I love that you said that they're advocating for themselves. But when we talk about the erosion of things that are going on in the workspace, and we talk about how belonging is part of a huge picture that has to have steps. Anybody want to pull in their thoughts on what they think the future is going to be in what we need to do? Is it going back to, like what Ann said, going back to what worked really well and then making sure we put it in place and getting rid of any fluff and other stuff that doesn't work? Is it revamping completely systems to make sure that we are integrating everything we need to? All those jazz and talk and fear and misunderstanding with AI and the younger work generations. How do we make it all work together to where everybody feels like they're included and that there's real equity and that they belong? How do we make that work?
I think there's a couple of key components, like from where I sit and the work we do. We really need to go back to basics, like basic human needs, because we're not a different person just because we step through the door of a workplace, right? So if you look at basic human needs, the first one is psychological safety. And if we start there and think, well, without psychological safety, an environment cannot be inclusive. It's not possible. people don't feel included, they don't feel safe, they don't feel respected, they don't feel understood. All the basics of inclusion, those elements aren't there without psychological safety first being established. And that psychological safety, then that step up is inclusion. And it allows for inclusion. It allows for people to feel that sense of belonging over time once those other elements have been built in. And it needs to be deliberate, and it needs to be considered, and it needs to be meaningful to have that trust and rapport built. But then I believe inclusion then creates and supports diversity and all the benefits that we know come from having a diverse workforce that then support and represent the diverse clients and communities that we work in. And then at the very top is performance, and diversity facilitates performance. So it really is psychological safety allowing for inclusion or the basics of inclusion leading to, over time, a sense of belonging. That creating and supporting and nurturing the diversity and the diverse workforces that hopefully we're all focused on building. And then that resulting in performance of an organisation and performance individually for every single one of our employees to thrive. So I think that if we start looking at the fundamentals of human needs and what people need to thrive and belong, then we might be on the right track.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love that. And I really love too when Anne-Marie said about taking these opportunities that we had right in front of us for the grabbing as gifts. And some of us did, and some of us did for a short term. And then some people reverted right back to things that were harmful to people's psychological safety. I think that a lot of people didn't think about all the layers and complexities at every intersection that meets any of us at where we are, to understand that maybe that's not the best environment for me if I identify with a disability, or maybe this workplace is just really too toxic and my physical distance from this workplace is a good thing because I never felt like I belonged anyway. The other thing that I see in my work a lot, and it came up today in a client call around conflict resolution, and actually it came up 2 or 3 times this week now that I think about it, but looking at how we talk to each other, our language, our words, how we care for each other. And sometimes I'll look at that and people look at you like, did she just say care? It's like, yes, we can care for each other at work. It can be its own love language, because effectively, if we don't do that, and if we don't do it effectively, we'll ruin people and their workplace experiences. I've been through that. Many of us have. And so it's also about, like, if something comes up at work, how do we address it? Are we as a work culture, able to have conversations that respect each other, that treat each other well, that understand that we can come to a common understanding and language in our culture? And that, like, okay, let's say something goes wrong. Like, how do we do the work and have the hard conversations? How are leaders preparing their teams to have those conversations? Or are you just leaving people to figure this out on their own? And what kind of environment are you creating in order for people to even understand? There's so much, I think, ambiguity, and that can be a good thing to give people challenge at work in the right ways. But we need to be more explicit in the workplace about the things that we expect of people or that we're asking. And we also need to take that other step deeper and really listen to what people need and ask. It doesn't have to be a formal survey, but like, you should be doing check-ins with your folks. What's on their minds as, like, Chasen the person, Desiree the person, versus what do we have to get done today? People are whipping through these agendas, not holding space for, we're running into meetings and even in our personal lives, like, are you okay? Yep, I'm fine. It's autopilot, right? We have to come off of autopilot and do the work. And it is hard and it takes our attention, but it is so worth it. Otherwise, we can't take those as those opportunities and gifts that Anne-Marie mentioned.
I love that. I'm going to press buttons again for 1 second. I don't know. That's terrible. All right. Never mind.
I should totally take this away from you.
I know.
That's
better. All right. That was better. All right. Our boxes are not quite as small now. So,
so something that
I should have done at the very beginning.
Something that I jotted down was, do your people need you to be a window or a mirror or both for the change of culture? And it used to be like that you wish to establish, but it's that you owe your people. So like when Tiffany was talking about the person and the people that are in the workforce, it's really like so many more elements now. It used to be that you would walk away from your world, go into the office or whatever your setting was, and put your time in and then step out. But now you've got family, you've got life, you've got causes that are going on, you've got society. There's so much happening outside that is no longer an outside inside thing. It is trickling throughout the work culture, and we have to make sure that we're doing a good job of taking a heartbeat on where are all of our people. And we don't have to all be in the same place at the same time either. We can't make it in very robotic. It has to be a very living, breathing experience for people in the workforce. And it goes into that psychological safety that Kylie said that we have to start with in order to truly be inclusive, is to not just let those things seep in, let people be who they are. And when you're genuine, they can be genuine. And you don't then have the policy on paper. You're living and breathing it.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's always so interesting too, to me, because I talk a lot about, managers being newer managers and coming into the workforce and how we just expect them to be able to do this work. It's like impossible, right? I need to make profits. I need to hit my KPIs, and I need to have you be an inclusive leader and do all these things. And who's training those people to do that work? Right? And if we're not supplying the people with the training, we can't expect them to even know how to do the work. And so I always struggle with organizations where we have an inclusive leader, inclusive leaders, and we have a great environment. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? None of these people have been trained to do any of that work. You can't tell me everybody feels psychologically safe, because I can talk to a million managers and they're not doing that. Right. And so I want to go back to that. I think there's always a piece to this too. And I love what Kylie said about the steps and components, but along the way, there needs to be that training for people to get that training of how to do that work. And I think that's so important. It's a step I feel like we missed the first time around doing this work. We started putting people in seats and checking the box and just saying, go ahead. And that didn't work. Right. And so it's one of the things I think I would, if we had to revamp it, would be that one thing, would be like, hey, we're going to revamp this and train people along the way how to do this work, right? To all the components of it. And I think it's super important to remember.
I think it also we have to go back to the very beginning, because people will, I know from even all of your work and watching some of the things that you do and seeing your posts and stuff, we're coming into the middle a lot of times into stuff that's like, okay, it's out of whack and we're having to fix it. But let's go back to the beginning. Like, when you started thinking about how to hire and who to hire and how that process even works, like, what's the strategy behind that and how do you do it? Because that's the start of creating a diverse, inclusive, psychologically safe environment. Someone had a post today, and it was not somebody in my normal network, but someone in my network commented, so it popped up. And on the last line, she had circled this this particular line from this post, from this job advertisement. And I was like, it reminded me a couple of sessions ago when Desiree wasn't able to join us, but we were all talking about Desiree like she was in the room with us, because she had just done, like a day or two before, this incredible post about what she had seen in a job advertisement and the language, and look at all the biases that were there. And I'm reading this one line, and I wish I had written it down to talk about it, or to say it out loud and just watch your faces all change. But literally, that one line, if I hadn't read anything else in the job advertisement, I would have been like, holy cow, that one 2-sentence paragraph just made me want to go, why in the world would anybody want to work there? Why in the world? And it really was about time management and if you take this job, what it's going to mean to we're going to need that 365 24/7, kind of. It was that type of thing that they were intimating, that you're going to have to be all in, Johnny. And I'm just thinking to myself, daggum. If this is how you're starting in your company, if that's how you start, no wonder you're going to one of these ladies later on to ask them to help you, because you got some problems. You got some problems. Oh my goodness.
We do diversity hiring work at DRG, and it's part of the program that we do. But I always talk I am glad to find you these candidates, but I want to hear what happens next, right? Yes. I want to know what the onboarding is. I want to understand if they're a manager, are they getting trained? Because I'm not willing to put the body in the seat if there isn't the next things, right? I'm glad to do the work, but there's all these components to that work. And it's so important, so crazy. And by the way, all those job adverts, they're everywhere. I see them all the time. They make me so mad. They make me so angry.
I literally wish I had written it down, because I knew was people were going to just drop the mic. It was this is incredible. And you're right. I'm a little out of touch in it, because I don't really, a lot of the work that I do with HR consultations is, literally a lot of the work we do is around updating policy and procedure manuals for poor nonprofits that are so focused in on all the other stuff that they haven't updated their policy and procedure manual in 10 years. I'm guys, it's come on, but it is incredible. And, I understand completely that it has to be done. It has to be done. So,
and Desiree also mentioned about the leader, and I'm finding more and more that you might get called in because the leader is at a place where, I need some help with my people, but it's actually the leader that you end up coaching and supporting, right? Because it's they've become stagnant, or they've been caught in this crossfire, if you will. And so it's supporting the growth in what the leader is happening, going back to that mirror or window of we're responsible when we're leading, and we can lead from all different positions. And so I find quite often that, you get calls to support, what do I do for my people? And the coaching ends up being more directed to the leader themselves to help them get out of that stagnation and really look at how far they are from what they know needs to be there, or how much they don't know, and supporting that too. And thinking that a leader shouldn't be vulnerable and do that. The failure lab, I think it is. Yeah, the failure lab. When I look at interviews and things that people are asking people that are coming in, or leaders that are coming in, I look at how do you fail? What do you do when a situation arises and you're going to fail? Are you going to throw everybody around you under the bus and completely demolish your culture? Or are you going to approach it in a way that I can learn from this and we can pick up and partner and move through it more quickly? There's some great work out there being done that's available at people's fingertips, but they get so caught up in the organization of DEI and the acronym of it, instead of the actions and the continuous work that we all have to do.
It is daily work.
Yeah.
Daily work. I love that, because I have absolutely no problem with a leader who is humble enough to put their hand in the air and say, you know what, I don't know what I don't know. I know that this is not what I want to see, and I don't know what I don't know, so I know I need help. That's a coachable person that is okay, all right, let's start. Let's do this. That to me, I would take 1,000 times over someone who's like, I've got all the answers. I just need you to come in and fix my staff.
Yeah. I mean, come on. It's the worst, right? It's usually you that's the problem, right? It's like, it's so annoying to me. It's not your people, it's you.
I just need you to fix my staff, please. Oh my goodness. Oh, so good. So good. Oh my gosh. I want to do a round robin real quick. And Tiffany had to pop off. Tiffany, we love you. Thank you for being here with us. Always great to see you. I want to do a round robin. We'll start with Desiree. I'm just going on my screen. And now that I've pressed buttons to get in, it's like everybody's in a box now. Look at this. It's so crazy. But I want to go around and final comments on belonging and anything else you'd like to share. And then we'll wrap up. Such a great session. I love this quarterly session. I never get tired of it. So thank you.
I will just say that I think, the world is changing and the world has changed. The generations that are coming in after us are not going to accept the things that we accepted in the past. Your organizations need to change. I hope that you will do the work. I hope that you will bring that inclusivity to the table. I hope that you will have the training for your people to be able to do that work. I hope you get to provide psychological safety. I hope all the things, but if you don't know what you're doing, reach out to one of these lovely women and figure out how to get it done, because the work needs to be done. And I just want you all to do better. That's it for me.
Kylie.
There's a couple of things. One would be to move forward. We are in a tricky place with DEI at the moment. I think that'll continue for a little while. Depending on where in the world we are, it's going to be different for a while, right? But I think the important thing to recognize is it's a continuous journey, like leadership development. No leader has all the answers. None of us are perfect human beings. We all need that continuous professional development to do better, right? And we can't afford to be complacent. So the egos we have to leave at the door, and we have to really, I think, be aware of where complacency can leave us and how much it's going to cost us when it comes to inclusion, psychological safety, and fostering belonging in our workplaces. But I think it's important as well just to look at it as a journey. There's so many different elements when we talk about belonging and inclusion and how we foster that over time. And a lot of it is what we've talked about, that inclusive leadership, the leadership development, fostering psychological safety, cultural competence, and recognizing how we work with diverse groups within our workplace to include and help them feel that sense of belonging. There's so many elements to it that we need to look at it as an ongoing, continuous journey of learning and professional development.
Awesome.
So I just jotted down the question of what do you spend your time on? Because it is an evolution and time is so precious and people are realizing it more and more. It's priceless. It's a priceless commodity, and we cannot continue to do the same things and expect to get a different result. So I go back to that, building a sense of belonging. It's about the here and the there, and keeping in mind the humanity of the work that we're doing and not getting caught into the vernacular of what the policies are or are not present for right now, but get into the real life action of it all. And I don't need to repeat, Kylie and Desiree gave some awesome suggestions about how to do that or where to start to be able to create that kind of environment. And I think it's important that every day we do a check-in of, we might not be there yet, but we're making a step closer and closer to being successful or more successful with it. Celebrate
so fantastic.
Yeah.
So fantastic. This is a quarterly event that we have with 4 outstanding human beings that I adore. Tiffany Castagno, Desiree Goldie, Kylie van Luyn, Dr. Anne-Marie Ristow, leading from the front. Thank you for joining us on our belonging issue, and we will catch you next time. Have a great evening. Do better, people.